The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling,
whether you like it or you don't like it,
needs us. Thanks for joining me for another Wrestling is Real podcast. Here with yours truly, KOP. We're going to go and do a little wrap-up show on NXT WarGames that happened today, as well as NWA Hard Times, which sounds about as legit as the show or as the promotion itself, but I'll explain that in a little bit. I'm not going to go too long tonight. There's a bunch of things to go up right there, and to really just for NXT and the WarGames show tonight, it's my chance to go ahead and really just focus on what they did with this pay-per-view and where things are, because obviously the 2.0 newbies, that's their focus. That's what they want to work on, and they absolutely did that. Now, did it do well? You know, it's not bad. Look, what the company wanted to absolutely accomplish, first of all, was to make sure that they weren't going to have to worry about the black and gold brand, which was comprised of all these independent wrestlers that were brought on board, which, listen, the likes of AEW, MLW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan, Mexico, any professional wrestling promotion would pay attention to a number of the stars that they had in NXT and that have been let go due to the new NXT 2.0. And we know there's probably a couple other names that are probably on the way out that might have wrestled their last match here on the program. Those two names were Johnny Gargano and Kyle O'Reilly, because their contracts are near up, or if they haven't already come to expiration, they're coming up very soon in this month. So we're going to wait on that, among other names that we know are going to be coming out as well. With NXT, we see the names, we see the stars they definitely wanted to go ahead and build up tonight. Let's get into the card itself. So when you look at where they started off, you had the Women's War Games match. Raquel González, Io Shirai, Cora, Jade, Kaylee Ray, Dakota Kai, and Toxic Attraction were the opponents. And the idea was, regardless, here's the thing. When you look at the Women's War Games match, one 2.0 star who was a face was put onto the face team comprised of NXT Black and Gold favorites, you could say. That's what they did. And Cora Jade was made to be the star. She's 20 years old. I feel like she might be, I don't know if I would say a little more seasoned version of Sky Blue in AEW, because she does feel like that. When I look at Cora Jade, she is Sky Blue. Just the Sky Blue just doesn't have that much of a, you can tell she's working her way up. She's made some time working in Chicago, the indie circuit, obviously. They both have that young, impressionable, pretty, young, cute, fresh face that, that both of these respective promotions are wanting. And, that's really what wrestling, with some of the stars when they're looking for women wrestlers. And of course, you're finding the ones that are definitely very technically sound. They're good. But then you also know that it's not so much where you have to have, the fitness models, or you have to have, the glamorous model-looking stars. You want some innocent, everyday girls that are going to resonate with a younger audience. And so when you look at Cora Jade, when you look over at NXT, or you look over in AEW, and I could say examples like Julia Hart or Sky Blue, that's the other example. You can tell I think that's just trying to attract to a younger audience. So I could see where some guys might just go in, younger guys that are trying to attach themselves to the wrestling product, they might look at Cora Jade and say that's they might get an attachment to them. They might simp for them. They might get a crush for her. Who knows? But it was a sympathetic character. They put the whole storyline in where there was a point in the match where she had her shoulder separated, and Io Shirai had to help her put it back in place. That was the focus for the most part that I got out of the whole match. If you wanted to give me that, plus I know Raquel González and Dakota Kai had their confrontation, and Toxic Attraction had their match in there. They were put in part, but it was Cora Jade's show. This was her match to put in. That was the focus, regardless of how the rest of the match went, which was okay. I mean, I'm not dumping on it, but I'm not necessarily going to praise it either. It wasn't great, but it was fine. It was really, it was just a starter match. It works out. I have no problem with that. But that was the focus of that match. Now, we already know Toxic Attraction. They already got belts, so they're already made. And I could see where in NXT 2.0 world, Toxic Attraction will be sooner than later. I think we're going to see them making their way over to the main roster. They're just ready to go. I mean, part of that is because of the fact that Mandy Rose has already had time on the main roster, and to bring her back in this new persona works well for her. Gigi Dolin, or the former Rebecca Kelly, has had lots of time in the indie world, and I also like the look that she had for her. I noticed that today some people were seeing on Twitter that her look tonight was resembling of Daphne in tribute, which was a really cool thing to do. But she's great. And Jacy Jayne doesn't really... She's there. Don't know much about her, and really just to go in, but she complements the team okay. So that team's pretty much ready to go. So if Toxic Attraction makes their way over, then they're going to go. And they're ready to go and be brought up if they're going to do it. Because I think more than anything else, WWE wants to go ahead and pull the trigger on some of these stars quickly. I don't think they're going to have anybody sitting at the Performance Center for a long time. And the reason why we're noticing is because we're learning about WWE's new plan, which I want to take a quick sidetrack on and talk about their new program, the Next in Line program. So let me go ahead and bring that up real quick. I didn't get a chance to talk about this on the program because it just popped in. But they announced a new name, image, and likeness program called Next in Line, a pathway for collegiate athletes to WWE, which capitalizes on the new NCAA's name, image, likeness rules out of the Title IX that allows athletes to profit from their name, image, and likeness. Triple H actually spoke regarding the program. It has the potential to be transformational to our business by creating partnerships with elite athletes at all levels across a wide variety of college sports. We will dramatically expand our pool of talent and create a system that readies NCAA competitors for WWE once their collegiate careers come to a close. Now, why am I bringing this up here? It's because the Performance Center is not going to be comprised as much as it was with independent wrestling stars or professional, trained professional wrestlers coming in, being retrained on WWE style. Instead, what they're getting now are some of the stars you already have in NXT 2.0 brought in from different areas, a different crop of stars with not that lengthy independent professional background or that professional wrestling training. Something out of a Killer Kowalski school or Lance Storm. They're not getting that. They're going to train them in-house. But the difference is that the NIL program, this is them saying, okay, you are professional grade athletes at the college level, the ones that will not go into the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball, whatever college sports, if you're not going to be selected or drafted into another professional sport, into a professional sports franchise, which there are many athletes out there in various sports, because what happens after some stars, say like they go through wrestling or they go to, volleyball, they go to whatever. I mean, there are some stars in the athletic level that there is not a professional level necessarily that is a professional sports league for them to compete in. So where does that talent go? Well, this is what WWE is trying to do. It's a genius move. It really is. Because now they're going to take a number of football stars, a number of stars in basketball. If they want to take people from professional, obviously Greco-Roman wrestling, they want to take from various fields. Track and field, absolutely great place to go. They already picked up an a shot putter. They're going to try to bring on. They've already brought on board as part of this. They're going to sign him as part of this Next in Line program. And what they're doing is, because they're able to go ahead and participate now because of the new NCAA rules, then they can start working with stars before they graduate, before they finish their school, or before they finish competing in the collegiate level. So Gable Steveson is an Olympic gold medal wrestler, but he is still wrestling and competing for the University of, I think, Minnesota, correct? So he's still going to be, at times, training to be a WWE superstar, meanwhile continuing his craft in professional, in Greco-Roman collegiate wrestling, championship caliber wrestling. That's the other thing. They're going to bring people on with a championship attitude, winning attitude, that have been, put through a regimen in collegiate sports with lots of resources, weight rooms, training, nutrition, strength coaches. You're talking about athletes that are built to the hilt, that are in incredible physical condition, and have great endurance, that can very well be molded into a very simplified version of professional wrestling, which is WWE style. If they can successfully transition themselves out to here, then they do it. But we see all the football players come in. And the reason why is because you got to just look back to the stars you brought in before. I mean, the stars that, in the last crop of stars that really stood out, that were important to the post-Attitude Era. Okay? Because the Attitude Era was built upon stars that were professional wrestlers. But the post-era, when you look at the OVW, you look at, I don't know if Batista was, I forget if he was in any collegiate in sports. I think he was football, I'm pretty sure. Brock Lesnar was football, plus wrestling, plus he even went to professional football, and he's been MMA background. You look at Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist. I mean, Chad Gable's supposed to be in that same kind of background. You look at, that's what it sounds like to me. John Cena came from a football background, I believe. I think that's what they like. I mean, when you look at some of the others from weightlifting, you just look at different levels. There are just some stars they pick up from other places that just fit right in. So to open themselves to that makes sense. Now we know where they're going to get their stars from. They're going to take raw athletic talent, but they're going to be professional grade athletic talent, and they're going to turn them into wrestlers. Okay, they're going to turn them into WWE superstars. It's not a bad plan. And, there's going to be some background where some of these stars, they just have the athletic acumen to come in and work, but then they also got to learn the entertainment part. So they're going to have to find out the stars that come in, that they bring into the Performance Center, and you got to say, okay, which of these have the charisma, have the swagger, the ego, to come right in with the confidence needed to then just be given a gimmick, given a part in a play, be given an act in the circus here, play the act out, and play it to the hilt, and know how to, take the character, take the gimmick, and run with it. Because they're not worried so much about the wrestling part. The wrestling is important to basically just go ahead and run through a basic wrestling match. I think the other thing will happen too is that with the indie wrestlers and the professional wrestlers we've had these days that always have to go and choreograph almost step by step their matches, move for move, this changes now because in WWE style, you'll have the stars that'll probably be doing the same thing, but not so obviously choreographed, and everything just goes in. They'll obviously have a move set they'll go into, which everybody will be recognizing, but then you'll see, I just think there is something where they're looking at that idea, and it's not wrong. I mean, Undertaker was a former basketball player, and you look at what they're doing, it makes sense to me. It makes sense. Now, I think the other thing we can think about as well is that if there are any stars they decide to bring in, it will not be from indie wrestling. If they're going to bring in anybody, what we can realize is if they have a background to previous stars. So Next Generation, they'll do that. So the Samoan family will always still have a spot. That's why I forget his name. Seek Saloa. If I butchered it, I'm sorry. I'm not looking it up. I just don't want to take the time to go back and look. You know what? I'm going to go look for it. Damn it. I can't help myself. Solo Sikoa. There we go. I'm sorry. So you have someone like him that comes in. You have Braun Breaker, who comes in from the Steiner family background. And all their history from behind them. Von Wagner, in relation to Wayne Bloom of the Beverly Brothers, there's that part. So, like, they'll take the sons and daughters of previous stars that might have been attached either to WWF or whatever there is, which is why Charlotte Flair is still such an important name because of her. Also, she had a volleyball background. She was a volleyball background, right? But also the Flair background. And, there's just the lineage of certain stars can be continued here as well, which is good. So you still get a little bit of that. But for the most part, the type of stars they have now, a Kyle O'Reilly, a Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, they're not made for the long run for this company anymore. And that's because the influence that Triple H had on certain projects are not embedded into the NXT system. But instead of the change here, all right, global talent strategy, this NIL program is probably a better move. So Triple H gets here, that's fine. But that's what NXT is going to become. The NXT stars we're going to see for going into 2.0, they'll be part of this program down the line. And how quickly will they be developed and transitioned into and made into the stars that they want. It's not a bad plan. So if they decide to do this route, I can't knock them for trying this out and going for this. It totally makes sense to me. Now, I'm not necessarily doing a full-blown recap of NXT's WarGames tonight, but I am using what's happening in WarGames tonight to talk about where NXT is going and where they are right now. That, I think, is very important. So, like I said, the WarGames match, that was a Cora Jade showcase. That's fine. With the Imperium, Kyle O'Reilly, Von Wagner match for the NXT Tag Team Championship, well, Imperium's going to hold those belts for whatever reason. I don't know what they see or what they'll plan to do with Imperium, because it's deciding on what they want to do with Walter. If they decide to go and work with him and bring him over to that main roster and bring Imperium together up as a 3-man, you could do that. You need a more of a story to give them than just what they've given them so far, because it's just they're not going to need to do more than what they do on NXT to create a little more color to the crew. It's just very black and white, the Imperium's gimmick. Don't get me wrong. Hey, something right out of the world of sport is great, but they're going to have to do something now in order to get Imperium to be moved up. Walter is the selling point for that team. Nothing against Fabian and Marcel. Walter is the standout. He has to be up there. So they could very well push them up pretty soon because they're going to have to. I mean, you've had Imperium down there in NXT for so long. They're going to have to move them up there and see what they can do. They're going to do it. Might as well just find out if they're going to sink or swim on the main roster because they've been down there so long. Now it's time to push them up. So that's another crew, much like Toxic Attraction. You can see those two factions going right on up. Legado del Fantasma, that's another team they're going to probably have to go ahead and see if they move up. Because those stars down there have been down there for so long, so move them up. Let's get there already. Because if you're going to go NXT 2.0, you need to make room to bring in these new stars you're going to bring in, whether it's the stars you've brought in through Vegas tryouts or this NIL program. That's who's going to replenish the Performance Center, and not because they've definitely gone a change of system. And we're seeing more of that now. As for Cameron Grimes, okay, So the O'Reilly Von Wagner story, O'Reilly turns on Von Wagner. So do we just get a match? No, we're going to get the steel cage match, which Kyle O'Reilly mentioned. Quick heel turn, and O'Reilly says, keep the steel cage up. I'm going to face Von Wagner Tuesday night. This could be the sign-off for Kyle O'Reilly, who could very well also join his buddies in NXT. Sure. And you could, or join his buddies over at AEW with Adam Cole and Bobby Fish, which obviously I wouldn't be surprised if Bobby Fish and Adam Cole are not trying to persuade Tony Khan to sign Kyle O'Reilly, and it would make sense for them to do that. I mean, why not? He's, very good hand, but, the other thought process too is that, when you look at Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, there are some place where they're going to have a lot of different matches to have. Very good, especially for enhancement in some cases. Not a team that you're going to see that's going to go all the way up, but, that's fine. And the veteran tag teams are good in here, or veteran single stars that they have, that's okay. And if AEW is able to take them in and let them work other shows, put them onto a non-exclusive contract, let them work in the promotion, because there's no Ring of Honor for them to go back to, because it's gone. And next week we're going to have to worry about that. So it might be a bittersweet occasion next week as Ring of Honor presents the End of an Era Final Battle, which I'll do a post show for. I will, and I usually kind of have been doing so many post shows after, but for the Ring of Honor show, I will do a post show. Because if we're closing down a promotion, yeah, it's a big deal, and I want to, talk about how it ends out and really just close out what Ring of Honor means, which is a sad way of the wrestling year to go ahead and end like that, but that's what we're going to be. Cameron Grimes, Duke Hudson, they've given a lot of time to put Duke Hudson in here and put him into this whole setup with the hair by hair versus hair match and the setup for them. Given a lot of time and definitely put a lot of effort and resources to get this match where it needs to be. Now, the fact that they did the whole poker room, the poker setup, and Cameron Grimes already got some of a cut, I'm not sure what to think about that. So if they were going to talk about doing some kind of work to, groom down Cameron Grimes, they've done it. I don't know if that's going to help his character or not, the image change, the makeover. But obviously didn't mind it because they went ahead and were able to go and get the trimming of Cameron Grimes. Because if you notice, it wasn't just his hair and his beard that have been were well grown out. They trimmed it down. Plus they trimmed down, you can tell the chest hair. He's not as hairy as he was. Like they said, he's much more presentable. You could say more attractive, absolutely. But that's what they wanted to do with him, make him much more. So this could be a change you're going to go with down the line. I don't know if that changes anything for him in terms of his character. Because you can kind of tell his character, the Tuna Moon character, is starting to get changed. Now, do they still see a lot of value in Cameron Grimes? And with these changes you've already made, I mean, you already could tell, people are behind this guy. So, is he a likable babyface enough to go and move him over to the main roster? That's another one. Is he going to be somebody that's been there long enough? Will they send him to the main roster too? Because you can just see there are certain stars that have had their time that are not long to stay in an NXT 2.0 facet. They're going to be moved up. And whenever they decide to elevate them, they will. Like, for instance, I wouldn't be surprised if a number of these stars, okay, like for when the Royal Rumble comes up next month and they need to fill 30 slots, then some of these NXT stars that could be debuting on Royal Rumble night, they could be entrants. So I can see where Cameron Grimes or the members of Imperium, including Walter, all get chances to get up there, and they're maybe not going to necessarily do some full-fledged rollout of an introduction for a star. They'll just embed them into a match like the Royal Rumble and just see if they sink or swim. That's not a bad move, but I could see them doing that. And it would obviously create interest because they just can't keep pulling the same tricks of bringing some star from the past in, like they've done Edge a couple years ago, or trying to bring some legends back. They might as well shock some people with some stars that they bring in from NXT that are getting themselves a chance to go up to the main roster and get some kind of exposure, and then eventually will be rolled into the main roster somehow. Roderick Strong over Joe Gacy. Now, the NXT Cruiserweight title, there was word that the Cruiserweight title might be dropped. So they could have done something with that where Joe Gacy could have gotten that belt and called the Inclusive Championship. But I'll say this. With the Joe Gacy character, I don't care much for the Inclusive gimmick. I get it. It's not like I'm not saying it's bad. It's just, it doesn't do much. I mean, it's not anything I'm really caught up on. He's not so much of a heel that I think you could hate him. But that's the idea. They want to think that Joe Gacy is this all-inclusive pseudo-woke gimmick is enough to make people hate him so much. I don't know if it's been that much to make me say he's like a full-fledged heel where he's got a lot of heat. I don't think this gimmick has that much heat. As for Roderick Strong, I mean, he is the veteran here holding this belt. Meanwhile, he's got a bunch of young stars in the stable now to work with. And those are the people that matter in the Diamond Mine. Ivy Nile and then the other two guys, I forget his names. So that's what they matter of. So Roderick Strong also is here for the time being as part of Diamond Mine, but will he be long for this brand as well? Because I think they could definitely make the move to transition out and phase out more stars. And I think that's what they're going to definitely do. I think some of these stars that are mainstays of the black and gold brand, even though I don't necessarily agree with everything that JD from NY206 says, but yes, trying to eliminate whoever was part of the black and gold brand, yeah, I can see that. But I think part of it's going to be that some of the black and gold brand, they're going to try to send them up to the main roster to sink or swim. And the others could be in the next rung of releases, which we could find out as soon as like February or March. Yeah, March, right before WrestleMania or after WrestleMania, we will see the other releases of any remaining stars of that black and gold brand. But then I think things start slowing down on the releases because they don't have much more to work off of. I think that whole thing will then cut itself down because, again, they've taken so many stars out. There's not many more releases left to make. I mean, there's probably about 5 or 6 stars left, main roster and NXT of the black and gold era that could also be let go. I'm not thinking of all the names right now, but maybe 8. But that's really all that's left. There will be so many stars they have left in here that are just part of things. So I don't know. Anyway, Duke Hudson loses. Cameron Graham gets the win. And they get some of the hair off of Duke Hudson. So I guess Duke Hudson goes for a bald-headed look with a beard. Okay. But I'm still not much into Duke Hudson at all. He's also another gimmick that doesn't get much heat for me. Like, I mean, really, any of these heels really give me any feeling of like just some major nuclear heat? No. No, nothing like that. Like, I'm going to use the example of NJF. Give me any one of these stars, a Duke Hudson or Andre Chase or, pick them. Like, which of these heels they have up on the NXT 2.0 roster that have nuclear heat, that really have already started just to really just piss people off just by the looking at them, just by saying something. Because some stars should be able to easily get some good side heat, and the gimmick should be able to give that. But it hasn't done so much. I don't know. More of an annoyance than heat to me. And then match number 5, Team 2.0, Bron Breakker, Carmelo Hayes, Grayson Waller, Tony D'Angelo with Trick Williams. Took on the Team Black and Gold, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Pete Dunne, LA Knight. The veterans look strong in this match, but we know that Bron Breakker was meant to be the big star here, and he gets the pin at the end of the night. And Bron Breakker looked really good in this match. His first real showcase since losing to Tommaso Ciampa for the NXT Championship. It was a good move for him, the way they presented him. I mean, Bron Breakker has everything that tells me that he's on a rocket launcher, ready to go to main roster when they're ready to put him up. I mean, they could send him up now, even though he might be a little bit green. Listen, if they let Omos up there the way he is, they could let Bron Breakker up there. All right? So they could do that and then see what comes of it. And that will probably be fine if they decide to make that point. So I don't have any issue right now. There's a number of stars they have that are interesting, but a number of gimmicks that just fall flat. Now, the wrestling's not bad. The women's match, left some to be desired, but for the most part, the wrestling was fine. The matches were good. Kind of had that NXT energy I'm normally used to on a TakeOver show. So I didn't think we missed much on that part. And that's the other thing, too. I mean, look, NXT is NXT. For everybody that wanted to make this indie field promotion in a WWE product and hope they were just going to have NXT just be this standalone that was just going to shine over Raw and SmackDown, no, you're not going to get that. And I was surprised anybody thought that could happen. Now, they were given the opportunity. Look, couldn't they have shocked everybody and have consistently beaten Dynamite in the ratings in the Wednesday Night Wars? Yeah. I mean, you could have done that. They had the live time slot. They had the star power. They had some decent star power in NXT. You could have done something there, but it wasn't enough. And, I mean, look at the change now. Ever since NXT moved to Tuesdays, you could never put this NXT, the black and gold version, or the one that's on now on Wednesday nights and compete with Dynamite. Can't happen now. You might be able to compete with Rampage, but Rampage is on at a bad time. And I was just on the WrestleNomics before I got in here tonight, and they were talking about how that people are definitely watching Rampage much more on DVR and not catching it live on Friday nights at 10 o'clock. About 40% of the audience that would normally catch Rampage when they were first watching it when it first came on, out of certain curious interest, well, those fans probably never left. They just said, you know what? This is cool. I like the show. I'll just put it on my DVR schedule. And that's it. I will TiVo it for later. Even for me, I'm watching it on streaming afterwards. I'm not watching it live because I'm going to the movies. Friday nights is just rough night. Hey, I'm lucky enough that I accommodate SmackDown, and I'll try to catch the last movie going on at the movie theater so that I can catch the end of SmackDown on Friday nights. Can't say the same much for Rampage. I'll just catch it like I do Dark Elevation. And just, I'll catch it on streaming on my phone later. It's okay. So anyway, that's what I thought about NXT's WarGames show tonight. The stars of coming up, they're interesting, but noticing that, plus the compliment of what they're going to be bringing on in terms of athletes are going to quickly turn around, most likely, to get them ready to be wrestlers, hey, they're going to do it. Because you never know if certain stars are going to come in and immediately take what's going on here and then just bring them right on up. Listen, I mean, Kurt Angle, we all know, he took into the wrestling bit. He caught on quickly. And there are going to be some stars that will have done the same thing here, and they will move up. But then some of them, they're not going to even bother to put them in NXT, most likely. They're going to probably just send them right up to the main roster. Because they could do that if they want. Okay, I want to go talk about NWA Hard Times. Now, look. They had a number of things going against them since the days that I was praising NWA doing the Power Show. And Into the Fire and Hard Times last time around. The pandemic has hurt them pretty good. They have struggled. For a number of reasons. Number one, you have a number of stars that were really prominent over in NWA before pandemic, and also before AEW really started, catching some ground. And some of those stars have made it over to AEW. So you look at, there's a couple of things. All right. I mean, you're looking at the fact that LA Knight was Eli Drake. Of course, we know Eli Drake from Impact Wrestling and NWA. And he moved himself over. They lost him. Thunder Rosa, who was such a draw going on for NWA, and she made her way to AEW. I mean, the association with AEW and NWA, you can't help if certain talent was going to make their way up. There's only so much that Billy Corgan can do to keep certain stars where they are. But then there are other stars that make their way over to the other organizations, or they get a chance to still work at NWA. But NWA is not going to be exclusive. Plus, they also have their struggles of trying to keep shows going. I mean, that's the other part. Of the NWA, for a long time, they had to go and stop doing power tapings. They've been very, very cautious, much like Ring of Honor, in terms of bringing crowds back and doing shows. I mean, the one thing that really stood out to me that I thought was very promising was when they did the shows in St. Louis. And I thought Empower and the 73rd anniversary shows were very good from the chase. I thought all that was good. Like, that was a good weekend of wrestling. And they had, some stars over there, but not as much. And they've had to go and do things where they've had to go and bring other titles in to be defended. So, yeah, the Ring of Honor tag team titles defended, which, I mean, I don't know if Ring of Honor, if those titles are ever going to be defended anywhere else after next weekend, or what they're going to do with those titles. It's like, if Ring of Honor is even going to still be a promotion, that's another question. Besides the fact that talent's already been released from their contracts, would wrestling promotions still consider to hold on to those belts and keep the prestige of them? I mean, could the Ring of Honor title still be used in other brands? Could, like, an NWA work with some way to do that? I mean, that's the other thing you got to think about, too, was that Ring of Honor had a certain time where they did have they had NWA, and they were both together working on things. Going back to the 70th anniversary show. But we know it was a falling out. Well, the AEW, I don't know if there's so much of a falling out here, but it's interesting what Billy Corgan's been doing. And the roster's made a lot of changes. Now, some of it's not bad. Listen, I'm not complaining so much about the roster and where they've gone with things, because it's not like it's... Tonight's show, the show they had last night was not bad. Not bad at all. But the first thing they did when it came to running the show in Atlanta, Georgia at the GBS studios, the timing was probably off, okay? I mean, this weekend in Atlanta was very busy. All right, you couldn't do anything on. So they decided to do the show on a Saturday. You got the SEC championship game with Alabama and Georgia. Like, that's the hot ticket. And Billy, my boy, thank you for bringing NWA back. I wish you could have picked a different weekend. Like, I know you wanted to do it this weekend or whatever, and it wouldn't have worked to do it alongside with Ring of Honor doing their show next week. But, oh, man. If there was a way to go and book that show, I mean, I know you couldn't do it on a Friday night because there's too much wrestling going on right there. Saturday night, you have the SEC title game, and then you got the Falcons playing as well a home game on Sunday. I mean, you could have done it Sunday night, but then again, you got WarGames, NXT. So it was just, I mean, everything just didn't work out perfectly for that. But then again, what they should have done was, we know Ring of Honor Final Battle, that's the 11th. So I believe it's still, or actually, is that a Saturday? I keep forgetting. Hold on. I am looking it up right now. Oh, excuse me. It is Saturday night. I am mistaken. Saturday night. And that's at 8 o'clock bell time for Ring of Honor's Final Battle. So with that show, I mean, the thing is that if you were going to try to schedule it at all, it would have been tough to do something this weekend. If you could have done it the following weekend, and you could have run on a Sunday, I guess, or on a Friday. But, I mean, I guess they want to do it on a Saturday because I think they've been doing Saturday pay-per-views anyway for a while now. So they didn't have anything else they could work off of. I mean, they could have done it on a Sunday night next week. That probably would have been good, but yeah, doing it the following week probably wouldn't have helped. And I don't think they're going to run shows on Christmas and New Year's. So, yeah, it's not a good situation, but they just decided to go with it. They did try to say that the audience they had there was, they brought a limited crowd because of COVID reasons. But then if that's the case, I didn't get whether everybody was socially distant, not socially distanced. Or I guess there were, and they were just kind of potted out. I really couldn't tell. So in the matches, they had 3 pre-show matches, and I missed all of them because I didn't realize they had started the show so early. But the Hex, Allison Kay, and Marty Bell, who were already the new NWA World Tag Team Champions, they defeated Kylie Ray, Tootie Lynn, 4-way tag team match, Missa Kate, Natalia Markova, Genocide, and Pamela Blaze, and a 4-way tag team match to retain the NWA World's Women's Tag Team Championships. Mims, accompanied by Crimson, defeated Jax Dane. And then there was an and then this is one thing that's been going on with NWA, which I haven't been watching the NWA Power Show or whatever the name they use now. I did hear that they're going to start using a new series called NWA USA. The other thing is, I don't get where they're just changing the name so often. But I guess they don't want to keep doing the power idea. They just decided that we're not going to do the old school look. They're going to change that up. So the old school look will still be remaining, but they're just going to just change the name of the show and do it to something else. The other thing is, too, is it's tough to go and watch their shows when it's just on when it's just on Fight TV. It's just to catch it on a regular basis. I've not bothered to go and buy the subscription. It's just too bad they couldn't keep the show on YouTube, but I understand they couldn't do it. So anyway, they had the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Championship qualifying gauntlet match. So having a third singles belt. Interesting. Instead of having a middleweight, or they just wanted to go junior heavyweight. So their version of Intercontinental, their version of U.S. title, that's what they want to do. Or, MLW has the National Openweight Championship. AW has their TNT title. So, I mean, yeah, the secondary mid-card belt they've created here. Only that title, or the TV title. I don't know if they needed so many, but oh well. So anyway, Homicide defeated Alex Taylor, Ari Daivari, C.W. Anderson, Jimmy Stanley, Jeremiah Punklet, Kerry Morton, Luke Hawx, PJ Hawx, Ricky Morton, Sal Renaro, and Victor Benjamin in a gauntlet match. Interesting. And for the fact that Homicide was the one that got the win in this here. And then Austin Aries is also now moved into the running to qualify for the NWA World Junior Heavyweight Championship, defeating Rhett Titus, who in the storyline they did give us, it's giving us a storyline, was that Austin Aries trained Rhett Titus a while back. So Mentor versus the Prodigy. Ring of Honor World Tag Team Championship was on the line. OGK, Matt Taven and Mike Bennett defeated Aaron Stevens and JR Kratos, to which after the match Aaron Stevens went ballistic and is now turning crazy, which is the next role for Aaron Stevens now, it looks like, in the heel gimmick. Which, by the way, Aaron Stevens has more heat than most of the NXT villains have right now combined. Let's just say it like that. Which is not saying much. Colby Corino defeating Doug Williams, so it's good to see Doug Williams back. Wonder if he and Nick Aldis will team back together for a little British invasion kind of action. I don't know, but it's thought. Impact Knockouts Championship, also Mickie James had trained Kiera Hogan. And Kiera Hogan, with the fact that she's in AEW, mostly on Dark and Delicate Relation, with a little bit of matches on Rampage and Dynamite. There's been reports that Kiera Hogan's kind of felt like she's lost in translation over there. I can understand why, but we had a good match with Mickie James to go and put this match. A lot of matches on this show tonight as well. Tyrus, accompanied by Austin Idol, defeated Scion in a no disqualification match. Scion, who was a mass wrestler, is supposed to be somebody, and that was the whole idea, is that Tyrus is trying to find out who it was. Pope, special guest referee. And so Pope is just kind of here, and I wish he was on commentary with Joe Gacy instead of Tim Storm and Velvet Sky. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Tim Storm is okay. He's serviceable. Same with Velvet Sky. Kind of like the Beth Phoenix and Stu Bennett or Wade Barrett roles put in here. But I wish the Pope was brought over to do analysis, because he was doing that in Impact Wrestling. And it'd be nice to not have him put in. I mean, well, obviously he still wants to continue to be actively wrestling, but I would prefer the Pope would still be back in commentary and would be working with Joe Gacy if that was the way they were going to go things. Because I'm not feeling much the commentary. Like, Joe Gacy's fine, but I think he needs other people to go and bounce off of. Obviously, him and Jim Cornette were good, but Jim Cornette, obviously, he made mistakes. I think Stu Bennett or Wade Barrett did a very good job, and that's why, obviously, NXT called upon to bring in Wade Barrett, and that makes sense. Don't get me wrong. I see why they took him back over. So there's the other part of that. But I don't know. Chris Adonis defeating Judas for the NWA National Championship. Well, Chris Adonis, nice to see him still working. I'm not much into this and the whole Strictly Business thing. La Rebellion, Bestia 666 and Metro Wolf 450. Defending the End for the NWA World Tag Team Championship. And the Endodas Impero, I'm not much into this team either. And what's interesting is that Fandango of WWE fame, or formerly Johnny Curtis, you might remember those names, he debuted along with JTG to form a tag team that apparently is going to go after the World Tag Team titles and go after La Rebellion somewhere down the line. So they presented themselves, and Fandango is now known as Dirty Dango. Now, what really did have some standout in the matches they had tonight, the last three matches definitely had some good storylines with it. So, Nick Aldis and Tom Latimer, it's a grudge match. Strictly Business is torn apart. 15 years these guys had together. Quite a storyline where Latimer basically got Aldis stretchered out, and Mickie James came out and was just distraught as Nick Aldis was laid out at the Chase during a Power TV taping. So you have that. And Nick Aldis does win in a very tough, stiff match. And by the way, the match was actually mentioned, no accompaniments at ringside. If either man was disqualified, they would have been suspended for 8 weeks. So the whole idea was, did grudge match need to happen in the ring? Get all your issues out and lay them out on the mat. So that was put out there. Camille defeated Melina for the NWA World's Women's Championship, and Camille has just been solid right now holding that belt. I mean, there's not many other stars they have right now that are, to the level of Camille that they could use. But I mean, it's nice to see that Camille is one of those stars in NWA that it's just a standout that people like a lot. She's damn good. Could be working in other promotions, but she fits right here very well in NWA. And who else fits like a glove in NWA when it comes to old school thought process to a new school audience? Trevor Murdoch. He defeated Mike Knox for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. Pretty stiff match. And Mike Knox, amazing how they just built this guy up as such a heel with so much heat on Trevor Murdoch right away. And Trevor Murdoch, such an old school baby face in every sense of the word. You can't help but like him. Now, of all places, the Deathmatch King, the GCW Impact Wrestling star Matt Cardona makes his debut on the NWA, and apparently he's next in line to go after Trevor Murdoch and the 10 pounds of gold. So you got that going for you. That looks pretty good. So Trevor Murdoch and Matt Cardona, we got that coming up as a match down the line. NWA, they've had to make a lot of changes. I mean, even with some of the stars they had there, Juice Boogie and basically 5150 has been formed now in MLW. Like, what's happened this year to me, and part of it is because MLW was able to go ahead and get the jump on NWA with getting shows back out again, specifically where MLW was doing, without crowds down at that nightclub in Orlando to try to get themselves back up, which worked well. And they started doing shows in Philadelphia because everything started coming back. So they said, okay, let's go back to Philly. We'll start doing shows there. If they could have done the War Memorial, they would have, but the War Memorial is being torn down at Fort Lauderdale, so to build it back up. And I don't think they were going to go back to the other place they went to last time to run shows. So, but the next thing they're going to do is go to Gilley's in Dallas, Texas, to go and run shows there. And they also have the Crash Wrestling promotion down in Mexico, which you were doing shows. That was the last show they did before pandemic. We were seeing tapings from the Crash tapings, the Lucha tapings down there. And by the way, MLW had a big crowd, 5,000 people in Mexico studying for that show. So we'll get to see a lot of that. And that should be pretty fun. I always like when MLW does the Crash stuff, especially now with this whole Cesar Duran and the Azteca Underground stuff. That's pretty interesting stuff. But I'm going to say it like this. When you look at it, I feel like, if MLW just had a better place to put their show, I don't know. At the moment, MLW is another promotion I think that is standing above NWA right now. And for a while, I thought MLW and NWA were kind of neck and neck. But right now, MLW, I think, is pulled ahead of NWA in terms of TV wrestling promotions, because NWA still doesn't have a TV home yet on any physical place except for 5 TV. And, that's pretty much where their house or pay-per-view. So you have to go looking for them. You have to pay. There's a paywall for them. At least to the credit of MLW, thank you, Court Bauer. You've kept the show free for those of us that want to watch on YouTube. It's still there. And so, at the moment, MLW Fusion Alpha is going on right now, and that's running Wednesdays, MLW's YouTube page and Fight TV, and the show's replayed Saturdays on BN Sports. So they still have their TV home, which is not in every market out there, but at least it's somewhere, much like Impact Wrestling. And for what it's worth, I really do like where MLW is going in a lot of different ways. Like, they got a lot of stars I like over there now. A lot. So they're going in some direction. Well, the number of stars they had are just very good and are just standouts right now. So I give them credit there. Let's just see if something more comes from that. But NWA is in a tough spot. But now NWA still holds a spot, in terms of the fact that they've survived and Ring of Honor has not. And go figure, Billy Corgan's still funding NWA as a promotion, which is wonderful. And if there was any way for him to go and work with some of the talent that's just been released from Ring of Honor, that some chance we'll get to see some of those stars move over from Ring of Honor to him, that would be awesome. I don't know if that'll happen, but, we don't know where Jonathan Gresham's going. We don't know if, the fact that we saw Mike Bennett and Matt Taven on the NWA pay-per-view, if they'll stick around afterward, if Rhett Titus will stick around, if the Briscoes make their way over. Perchance. If Shane Taylor Promotions comes back, we don't know. But look at the stars we got for next week's Final Battle, which is the next post show I'll do next week here on the Wrestling Observer podcast. Jonathan Gresham and Bandito. You got Willow Nightingale going up against Roxy for the Women's World title. Briscoes for the OGK for the World Tag Team titles. The Pure title match, Brian Johnson versus Josh Woods. 6-man tag team action for the title there. Shane Taylor's Promotions against the Righteous. And Shane Taylor taking on Kenny King in a grudge match. So they have that there. And, there's still a couple of stars there that I think would absolutely go and work in other promotions. So if you want to look at Kenny King or Shane Taylor, or if you want to look at Josh Woods, if you want to look at the Briscoes, if you want to look at, Roxy or Bandito, you could do that if they're, or Jonathan Gresham especially. If those stars might be somebody you could bring over, even if Dalton Castle, if you feel like there's any kind of value there with him as well, might as well bring him on over. See what happens. So I don't know. there's a lot that's going to be had, but there's a lot that's going to talk about between now and then. We'll do a preview for Ring of Honor's Final Battle. Find out if there's any more information we get before next week's show. And we'll leave it there. Thanks for listening in. Subscribe to the show as you always do. Come back for another Wrestling Is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling Is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts, and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.